What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Durable by Design with the one and the only Crispy Barnett. What's up, my man?
What's up?
Today we got something exciting. We got a series we'll be talking about. It is what's the things holding service companies back, or as Crispy would say,
why service companies suck. Honestly,
yeah, okay. Yeah, he can say it because he's owned one before, so
yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Lead us through it. He's put some topics together. We will hit them in order, and we'll talk about them, and hopefully it provides value for everybody.
Yeah, these are topics that I was thinking. I was like, what pain did I experience, or did customers experience in my time as a service agency? And so number one, and I was thinking, and these aren't ranked necessarily, but I think that this was one that was especially painful, was handoff processes are the worst. Like, they are the worst by far.
Okay, what does that talk to me? What does that mean? And
Yep.
I think you've done something about this problem, and I don't think anybody else ever has. So
Yeah.
talk to me. First off, what's the problem? Mm-hmm. And then let's talk about how did you think about solving it?
Yeah. So the problem is whenever you have like a seller servicer model as an agency, your leads or customers that you're talking to are not trusting of that process because they go through discovery with the sales rep and they talk about all of their pain points and their requirements and stuff like that. And the seller says, yes, we can do everything. Like, yes, we can do all of that, no problem. Like, this is going to be easy. You're never going to have to like change your scope with us, blah, blah, blah. And it's terrible. Then it gets to the delivery side and you're talking to a completely different person who has to revalidate your requirements with the lead, now customer, and has to go back through all the discovery notes and verify everything is possible, blah, blah, blah. The big problem, and like even I would deal with this in my sales cycles, is people would ask, well, who's going to be doing the work? Like, is it you? It's like, oh, it's not me, but I'm saying yes to everything. It's like it's so painful because it's like buying a car, a used car. Like, the used car salesman is going to say, yeah, this car is never going to break down, blah, blah, blah. And the mechanic's like, this car is fucked. Like, it's not good. So that's the big pain point that I found in my experience.
Let me sit in this for a second. Make sure I get it. Service companies are not like product companies. Mm-hmm. That when you're selling people and you're selling something to be done,
yep.
And there's an inherent risk, and the gap is larger when you sell, because you're selling a methodology, you're selling people, you're selling delivery, you're selling an essence, mm-hmm. if you would. And so people buy that essence, which is often the salesperson, which is like the founder often, and then
yep.
then that essence is then given, and there's this huge cliff that's very difficult to get over with services. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say I agree with that. How did you? So I too have attempted to solve this. We've solved it in different ways. I think you have probably the most. How do I put it? You've done it in a way that I've never seen before. I'll call it unique, and then I'll talk about how I've tried to do it. How did you try to close this gap at workflow?
Hey, remember, no one's unique. Remember that we did that in the previous.
Yeah. Well, I say this. I mean, I don't know what's next is, but like how you solve this problem.
Yeah.
Say this: how you solve this problem better be part of why you win the deal. Let me just say it that way, like, because this is like we talk about methodology. This is actually this actually defines your delivery vessel, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second. But Chris, it's all interplays with each other. Anyway, how do you close that gap? How did you do it?
Yeah, so I quickly found that the normal journey for most service businesses was you hire, like the founder does everything first, right? You sell, you service, you deliver, you do everything. And then the first person that you typically hire is someone who can do the servicing so that you can focus more on the revenue driving activities. And then the natural journey that I found just kind of in my ecosystem and network was you then hire a salesperson, right, who only does sales, and that's when you introduce handoff, which is the seller sells and the servicer like delivers, and that's it. The way that I kind of broke that model was, first off, I found that it's really hard to find people that can do both selling and servicing together, because it's either you have deep product mastery and like you have like expertise on how to deliver the services, but you may not have like the sales skills and like ingenuity to be able to position like value props of the service. And on the flip side, it was the sales reps had like the personality and the ability to display value props and like challenge your sale and the methodology behind it and stuff like that, but they didn't really have deep product understanding. And so I found that if I had to choose between one of those options to build like a solutions architect, is what I called it, it was much easier to introduce a delivery person into the sales process. Much easier. So that at that point I was creating a hybrid of like service sellers, which positioned everyone as a revenue team at that point, which was awesome. And so the change that I made was I was very intentional about including my delivery team members as part of the sales process, which led to like a really pleasant customer experience, because the answer to the question was not, hey, your person that's going to be delivering is not me, it's someone else that you haven't met yet. It's like, no, this is a person who's delivering. They're going to run your discovery for you. I'm just here as a seller.
Here's what I heard you say: is you bridge the gap by the way, if you haven't seen this, is my son Eli. Everybody, if you're looking visually, you bridge the gap by bringing delivery into the sales process. Mm-hmm. Did they do the selling themselves?
In the eventual state, yes. So this is where like it's progressive. Where I found that the easiest way to do this now, if you're to adopt this like as a service business, is when you begin to introduce them into the sales process to run discovery. The natural like next step is they begin to flag upsell and cross sell options for the current customers they're serving, and they can manage that on their own because they're running discovery previously for a new business cycle. It's sort of like a graduation like type of process. So they run discovery right for the customer that they're going to service, then they do upsell, cross-sell organically, then you can bring them in to run new business cycles. And then from there you have like everyone that's running new business cycles, delivering and doing upselling and cross-selling.
So did you compensate them differently? Like
I did
if
not.
They won the deal. Okay.
Yeah, I did not, but that's where like looking back, you like I should have.
Yeah, give them $500. Give them a steak dinner or something, Crispy. What are you doing? Just
Well, no, I mean, they were well compensated. I can say that in the sense of like just initially, but I never got any complaints. I mean, but I think it's just a matter of like I paid for value, and I made sure I got value as well.
Yeah, there's something to be said. I mean, I asked that question because in sales, you just think you need to have Excel, but the reality is, that, I mean. If you you went into something different, which is talking about like paying people well, and so that like the value, where they put the value doesn't matter as much. Here's how I solved that problem, and I said solve that problem. I think the word solved is a strong word. Here's how I mitigated the risk, and that risk and getting good at mitigating the risk from sales handoff to delivery handoff is a fundamental issue that service companies have to do. And the worst experiences occur. This is a sales to service handoff, and I think my wife just handed me, and I have no clue why it's in my room. Like it's happening.
Full of friction, yeah.
Yeah. This is live. We're doing it. So this is what happens is like you'll have sales, and then they're delivered, and who starts complaining? The customer. And they don't feel it. And there's a lot of ways to mitigate it. Here's how we mitigate, like I was mitigating when I was at Red Partners, is number one is we didn't move founders out of sales for a very long time. I know that sounds weird, but because what do you buy is, so like if someone came to me, and so some of this like sale, there's an intense amount of sales and delivery, like back and forth. You're like, oh, they didn't. So if someone's coming like, I didn't scope it right, is that what you're telling me? And I know it sounds awful, but it's just a difference. It's like, hey, yes, I created a new product, and I think it's important for us strategically, and I think it's important for founders to stay in sales longer, and it's actually good for the business, because it's the hardest thing in a service company is moving from sales, led sales, getting founder out, not moving from founder led sales. Number two is number two is we actually moved, almost a model you said, is we started, as we moved to sales, we had the problem, we had wicked, like just really bad problems between the two.
Yeah.
We did the exact same thing, and we had a rotation, and we worked in pods, and we brought somebody from delivery we had stages they had to approve and see the scoping. And they did the scoping themselves, and it became part of the sales process. And I love the way you scoped it. And all we did was just move up delivery, which risked hours, but it was totally worth retention. Worth retention.
Yeah, it's interesting. So then, when it came to upselling into like the existing customers that they were working with, was that person still involved at that time?
Yeah, because we only did pod leads, and so we worked on pods, we had leads, and they had upsell criteria they had to hit. So we had pods, and it's none of the people under. And to become a pod leader, you had to like accept that as part of your role, and we had that as part of capacity to give. And it was just the way we did it. The reality is, you have to solve this bridge, and it is bad service companies. What keeps them from going is not recognizing the problem and not addressing it. And the way we addressed it was just to bring the delivery process into the sales process. And it sounds like you did something earlier, but you did it even earlier. Like we didn't do discovery. So.
Interesting. Wow. So then, when you mentioned like to become a pod leader, you had like certain criteria you had to hit, stuff like that. It sounds like those are like upsell criteria. Did you have like a quota in terms of like billable hours for pod leaders?
No. Well, this is probably another thing is we didn't think this idea of billable hours did not exist in the agency I ran as a concept. So, there's a lot that goes into that. Probably not this first one. Handoff processes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So what's next? What else? So number one, handoff processes must be addressed. It is even more important, I would say, for service companies than because apps can self-serve themselves sometimes. Services are people and their experiences.
Yeah.
Number two.
I've got another one. I think it's a good transition because we're talking lightly about scoping, and it was retainers get viewed as a free pass to ask for anything by customers to a certain degree. And it was just annoying. And a lot of, especially now that I talk to partners like on a daily basis, a lot of partners will say yes. They realize that the customers will ask for anything. It's like, oh well, I have a retainer. Like whatever, I'm paying you monthly for 10 months or a year or whatever. So this is a reasonable request. And so, and a lot of partners will say yes, and they'll just do it, which, I mean, sometimes it's fine, I guess, but it was always painful because I dealt with this internal struggle of, should I say no and rescope this, especially if it becomes active, or should I just say yes and ignore it because I'm helping to satisfy the customer? And I never really landed in a spot at the end of this journey. I definitely leaned more towards I'm just going to do it because it's part of a retainer. I'm getting paid regardless, whatever. But I'm curious, in your scoping process, did you have anything like contingency or variables or padding in there to account for the types of requests?
Let me recap what I heard as the problem.
Yeah.
The problem I heard you say is when you have a retainer, meaning being paid monthly for a set of value, some whatever value set, that becomes a. Are you having a? This is, by the way, I just feel like we're just doing the essence of service. I'm having a hard time. I love this. Yes.
That's it.
I know they just asked for candy. Is the problem being, if I have a retainer with ongoing service with a bucket of value, it's a request to ask for anything. It's this open scope for asking for anything, and to do it creates a bad habit that then leads to the inability to scale. That's what I heard you say is the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's how I've solved this. I think it's really important whether you do it or not. What I mean by that, whether you do a product or not, it's important to have product scopes. So we didn't have retainer. We did not have at RevPart. We didn't have one retainer. We had 3 different types of retainers that had scopes built into the retainers. So we pioneered the idea of RevOps as a service. Yeah. That being said, where did RevOps stop and where did it begin? We defined that. We said if you do anything that comes where you're generating if you want us to do lead generation activities, we will not do it unless you get our and we had a whole package that we had a whole separate. It was a separate team that would be added on. That's number one. Number two is we had another portion because they often be. So we had separations built into our packages, and so that was number one. Is we had built-in ideas what retainer, like left and right limits that we teach. Number two is. So by the way, there's no request that was not defined. You could not make a request. Will you build a logo for me? You'd be like, no. We do have a package that helps with that, and I'd love to connect you with that team. And we, okay, this is number two. And we had operating principles on how you talk, and so it's all about adding value. So if someone asks a question, sometimes questions are great. It'd be like, why do you want to make a logo? And you talked about that. Why do you want to make a logo? Well, I need this. Like, well, here are 3 ways to solve that. Number one, go get Fiverr. Have them do that logo. It's going to cost you $10. You don't want me to waste time on that.
Yeah.
Number two, you need a new design. Go to 99 Designs. I can help you but I'll help you manage it. Mm-hmm. But just know it's going to take off from the value set that I'd be giving this month.
Yeah.
But, and number three is we have a package that can help you think about this holistically and really drive more value than maybe those two. But I don't think you need that right now.
Interesting.
So that's the way we managed it.
Yeah. So you had subsets of retainers that had different things included, and you were using it as a cross-selling technique.
First off, let me put another one. And this is, I never used the word retainer in my entire life. So I had product packages, and if you went outside the package, you needed a different product.
That's cool.
Right, and then you would have like, oh, you want all bound, and you want RevOps. That's an extra discount, and you could package things, or you could buy and eat individually.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah,
because we're creating NER, you have to do retention. And what if somebody ends RevOps, but they love your experience, and they're like, hey, I've noticed now that we solved your engine problem, now let's feed your engine. And it just happens naturally, man. Like it's very useful.
I like the positioning of like a package. I think that like agencies are universally hated by lots of different businesses and people. I think everyone has some level of a horror story with an agency, and it's usually because I had this retainer, they did nothing, like my team had to do everything, blah blah blah. And so retainers specifically get a bad rap, I think, because of other industries as well as just previous horror stories from like bad players. But positioning it as a package, I think, is very valuable. And I'm also getting hints of like of packages that contain a solution as well inside of that. And I think that's really tricky for a lot of people that want to do RevOps.
Look, now having done built a SaaS company as well, and I'm even more. And if you're a HubSpot Solutions partner, you've heard it and you probably didn't hear it. And it's the jobs to be done that you have to go, and that's the best part of that entire thing. Jobs to be done. Things like Christian, I can't remember his name, but the Harvard professor has not passed away. Okay, so I'm going through I'm right now rethinking, and you can see it for a second, this pricing roadmap. And when you create a package, you package your product is a job to be done. Mm-hmm. And that's why RevOps is so big. And so you have to have, the scope has to be big enough, is that a job to be done? And my job to be done is to make sure your revenue engine is efficient, and I can see if there are any leaks. And if there are leaks, I know how to fix them and we had this whole idea of the bow tie model and we had numbers, right? From conversion point 2 to conversion point 9. And period. And the job to be done there is efficiency, effectiveness, and to make sure that when I put something in, it poops something out good.
Yeah.
It's total different to say, oh, I need to create demand to put in the engine. It's a different job. So think about things as jobs and then pack and put solutions that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one of the questions that I often get from partners and just other people in the ecosystem is a couple of things. One is, how do you define RevOps? Because I think there's multiple definitions out there, and no one really is clear on like what it means and how to build a service around it. And there's 2 more on top of that, which are how do you build RevOps into a scope that has deliverables? And then 3 is, how do you measure the success of it? And I get those questions all the time.
Yeah, this is when I talk about having a methodology, and your methodology must have answers to the questions, even if you're wrong. And so, I mean, I have robust amount of thoughts about those. I've wrote a RevOps manifesto that talks about what those. I've done an entire presentation on what is RevOps. I did a 15-hour boot camp on what is RevOps and how to think about it. Go copy it. Go just take it, rip it, and just regurgitate it. You will win so many deals. I promise.
I think this is so interesting because like even just talking about this now, like just this episode alone, there's more content here that we've talked about that partners can go and take action upon than I've ever seen from like any boot camps like by anyone else, honestly. And like I think that's a shameless plug on like channel program and like Super Does It Business is like we have nothing but like resources to give to everyone, and like there's nothing that's gated with what we do. There's nothing that's like withheld from our partners and stuff like that. Like we actually give out documentation and resources from previous lives that we've had that help build better businesses. Literally, that's what we've been doing, which is wild.
So with that, Crispy, we got 8 more things to talk about. I think this is a good stop for this this episode. Let's and we'll wrap it back up, and we'll just continue. Everybody, as we end, which is awesome. Crispy, tell me something that nobody knows about you.
Oh, man. I am a very, very good chef.
Boom! You heard it here. Very, very good chef, and his favorite place to go on a weekend is
Target. I've got kids, so.
His favorite place to go on the weekend when he's thinking about food is.
I mean, tacos, Tex-Mex here in Houston is king. So.
Talk about cooking, Chris. I thought you liked Asian food.
Oh, I do like Asian food. Yeah, so Chinatown in Houston is the biggest Chinatown in the
Talk
nation.
about grocery store. What's the name of that grocery store?
Oh, 99 Ranch.
There it is.
Yeah,
So he likes to cook, and his favorite place to go on the weekend when he's thinking about cooking is
99 Ranch.
There it is. Okay.
Grocery store.
Everybody, we are sponsored by 99 Ranch, and if you didn't know it, maca wheatgrass is very good. Everybody have a great day. Stay awesome. Keep doing it big. Adios.
See ya.